So, to get some answers about this, joining us now is Doctor of Psychology Lee Richardson. Lee is the founder of the Brain Performance Center. Lee's joining us on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline. Dr. Richardson, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, I saw the piece, or I saw the study in the journal PLOS ONE. Why do we believe we are right when somehow in our brains we do understand, right, that we can't possibly know all the facts?
Well, it was an interesting study, and I like the terminology it used, illusion of information adequacy. We think we have an adequate amount of information. We don't ever stop and pause to wonder. I say wonder. Some people say be curious. But we think that we know what we need to know. And that's because we all have biases. I do, you do, we all do. And sure. I think the confirmation bias is something that we all share. And we have our beliefs, and then we get this information, these facts and this evidence presented to us. And doesn't necessarily confirm our beliefs, so we ignore it. We think, that's not correct. And we tend to favor the information that confirms our existing beliefs or values.
I understand that. And the ignoring part is, I think, is what troubles most of us, because I think, is it a matter, doctor, that we feel, okay, if I believe this and I've read or seen a bunch of information about this, so I believe it's true, and the information that we see that would maybe contradict it, is it a fact that we choose consciously to ignore that, or that we assign that, like, well, I don't believe the source? Is it that basic?
Well, Socrates said, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And I think that there are facts and there are truth. And a fact is a verifiable piece of information. Now, what we consider to be our truth are our beliefs, and that's subjective, and that's influenced by how we perceive things. And I do in conversation, I'll use fact and truth interchangeably, and they're really not, because people, if you say, well, I know the truth, that's what they're going to base their decision on. But if we could all just hit the pause button and just consider, is there anything else out there I ought to think about before I make a judgment on something? I think that would leave us all with a lot more flexibility and give us an opportunity to really use new information that will shape our perspective.
But Dr. Richardson, we can't ever really know the whole truth about something. I mean, would you agree with that no matter what the situation, certainly if it's not happening to you exactly, like, for example, politics, we don't know what's in the hearts of our politicians. We don't know what was said in secret about our politicians. I mean, how are we supposed to can we ever feel like we have all the facts?
That's a really good question, particularly in terms of politics. But I think that, there's so much more information available to us now, and there's so many different ways that we can get it. We can get it 24/7 if we want. We can stream it in. We can keep it coming. And what I think we need to really do is say, where am I getting my information from? Verify your source, because you're exactly right. We may never have all the information that's out there, because it comes to us now instantaneously. Times have changed, not the old days where we used to watch the news or listen to the radio on the way to work. We keep it streaming 24/7, and we need to take responsibility for the information that we want to choose to believe is the truth.
We're talking to Lee Richardson, Director of Psychology, founder of the Brain Performance Center. I often think about these studies that I've seen in the past and that are still conducted, that where you get one test subject and they're in a room with, 8 other people who are part of a study, and they put something blatantly false, like on a chalkboard or a billboard, and because all the actors in the study say this is the truth, that the other person is just, because they don't want to go against the grain, they'll just agree with it. How does that play a role in how we consume information and how we believe what we believe? You know, confirmation bias you talk about. Also, if you're with a group of people that believe the same way, isn't there something inherent about the human mind that says, well, they all agree with it, so I better agree with it too?
Well, and a lot of times we'll tell ourselves, well, they're smarter than I am. Yeah. They know more about this than I do. So, I mean, and I think there's also a cognitive bias, and that affects how we process information and how we perceive others. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, they studied that for 15 years. They've got to know more than I do. So, okay, I'll go with that. And we don't know what they studied for 15 years. We don't know how long did they study one day a week for 15 years. So it's a good example of, just as I said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that as we continue to be wired, and during the pandemic, we wanted instantaneous information. And now we've kind of hardwired our brain that way. And we have to really stop and just pause and consider, is there anything else that I didn't think about?
So that's the advice then, Doc, right? That's the advice, to sort of, because like you said, just to kind of sum up what you said, because it was also interesting, the information is coming at us 24/7, and it is not in human nature, our nature, to say, what other facts do I not know? You read an article and you assume that now you have all the facts, but yet, even after we read something from a source that we consider credible, you're recommending that we sort of take stock and say, what else do I not know, right?
Absolutely. And, it's just slow down, hit the pause. We don't have to be so fast to become so convicted that what we know is right.
I would imagine for somebody who studies psychology and others who study sociology, that this is a fascinating time to be studying it. And I always think about, in my mind, I'm always thinking about, these last 10 years or so, it's going to be fascinating, years from now, to look back at this time and look at how humans, especially in America, how they processed specifically political information, and how they seem to be differing so greatly on things that seem to be cut and dried. I just find it fascinating that this is ample ground for psychological study.
Well, you make such a good point, and that's how we process information. The way that the brain processes information is it turns it into a story. But if there's a blank, the brain doesn't necessarily, it's just not the first thing it does to go fill in the blank with the right information. Whatever comes to mind, we'll just stick it right in the blank and move on. And that's the way we process.
Really interesting stuff. Our guest, Dr. Richardson, is also the author of the book, The Brain, Turn on Your Brain and I want to get it right. Turn your brain on to get your game on. So we really appreciate you joining us today and sort of letting us know that we're never right. That's what I'm taking away, Doc. We're never right.
You're right.
There you go. I'm right. That's the only thing I'm right about now. Dr. Lee Richardson, thank you again so much from the Brain Performance Center for hashing this out with us.